Hi there, it's me. Just want to give you an update on the Walking Dead. I just finished rewatching start to finish, and that's why I'm updating all the episodes of season 6 before we get to season 7. Now, we all know what happened in the mid-season finale of season 6. It started when the tower came, the tower of in Alexandria came tumbling down and broke the wall, and then all of a sudden all these walkers were coming in. Were coming in, and Alexandria was surrounded. They were trapped, and eventually the war started to begin. Deanna went to help Rick. Eventually she got injured in the process, and eventually Eugene overheard in the CD on the CB saying, overhearing Daryl saying, "Can you hear us? Who's there?" And then Eugene picked it up and goes, "Help." And so it was Eugene's voice on the walkie-talkie and not Glenn. So we all know that by now. And eventually Eugene was really, really scared. He had the dagger right in his hand, and then all of a sudden Walker came closer to him, and then Rosita shot the walker, and Eugene, Tara, and Rosita went to escape in the garage. And then all of a sudden Jesse came out and started shooting the walkers, and then they asked Rick, Michonne, Deanna, Carl, Ron, and Father Gabriel to go in her house where it's safe. So eventually that's what they did. And meanwhile, Carol and Morgan, eventually they were running through from the herd. Carol fell, and eventually Morgan helped her up, and she had like a gash on her head. And so they went into the house where Morgan is holding the wolf as a prisoner, so he could get him to change. And then when you see then all of a sudden we're going to start off in the Woodbury in Jesse's house. Eventually things were good for now. You hear Sam in the bedroom playing tiptoe through the tulips, being a little scaredy cat that he is. And so they went to lie Deanna down the bed to tend her, like she was shot in the leg, and I think she was mostly shot in the ribs. But eventually, when Michonne went to treat her, like treatment, and she looked up the top, and then she saw a walker bite. So Deanna got bitten by a walker, which is really, really sad. So I guess that means Deanna's going to bite the dust for sure. Then Ron went to the garage wanting to end his life, and Carl came and to see Ron, and then they got into this argument about Carl's father being a killer, and they were having arguments about their fathers. Then all of a sudden they get into this huge fight, and then all of a sudden, Ron had a shovel, and he tried to fight off Carl, but eventually the shovel hit the window, and the window broke, and it was commotion everywhere. Yeah, well, all hell broke loose at that time. Rick and Jesse came down, they unlocked the door they unlocked the doors since Ron locked it, and eventually they both escaped, and then Ron went into another room, and then Carl came and pointed his gun at him and says, "Give me your gun now." And so Ron gave him his gun, and then he said, you know what, I know what he says. When Ron called Rick, Carl's father, a killer, Carl made a remark to Ron, says, "Yeah, well, let me tell you something about your father. Your dad was an asshole," which was the truth. Pete Anderson, porch dick. Goodbye. So eventually, Deanna, who was burning up, she wanted to see little Judith for the last time, and Rick thought Judith was being eaten by a walker. And then Deanna turned, but eventually she didn't. and like she had like pep talks with Michonne saying, this pain will be useful to you, and what do you want out of life? And then and Deanna decided, they're your people now. I see the way you treat your people. You now run you now run Alexandria, and you take care of all those people, like, because she knew her time was running out. So eventually Rick gave her that request. And then all of a sudden, like, there were walkers, like they were barricading all the windows with furniture and all that, and eventually it did not work at all. The walkers still was coming in, and then Rick and Michonne were up the stairs. They killed 2 walkers, and he says, we're going to need about 2 walkers. So eventually they took the walkers up to the bedroom, and one of the bedrooms, and then Rick told Jesse, and they say, we need bed sheets, one for each person. I know what I'm going to do, because they're going to cover up all the sheets with guts, walker guts. That's what they did in season 1. Like, I remember when Glenn threw up when he first was all covered in guts, I was just cracking up. But if it looked like Father Gabriel was going to lose his cookies as well, like, I'm just like, oh, Father Gabe, don't you dare. But eventually it was a bit disgusting, but oh well. Okay, like, I'll leave it like that till the end. And eventually we go to Carol and Morgan. Carol was injured, and Morgan was looking out for her and says, sit down before you fall down. She says, like, who do you trust? Like, he says, not a lot of people. Like, eventually Carol, she was dizzy, and eventually they were down, like, and then one time Carol started resting her eyes, and Morgan went, Carol? And she told Morgan, just resting my eyes. And then Morgan turned and looked away, and then all of a sudden he turned back, and Carol, what do you know? Carol was gone. And eventually Carol, like, Denise is trying to fix the wolf, we now know whose name is Owen, and eventually he had a gash on his abdomen, so she went and she's trying to heal him, and she kept begging him, you weren't born this way, you changed, it's never too late to change. And so, but Denise is trying to get some pep talk out of him, and then when Denise was tending Owen's wound, Carol came down and with her Bowie knife saying, get away from him. And then all of a sudden Morgan came down, and then they got into this huge conflict, and Carol told Morgan, don't make me kill you. And he says, you don't have to kill. And he says, he says, like, he still believes all life is precious and all that bullshit and all that. But eventually they got into a huge confrontation, a huge fight. He knocks Carol out, and then Morgan tried to hold back Carol, trying to kill Owen eventually. And eventually they got into this big fight, and then all of a sudden, the one part that pissed me off was when Morgan body slammed Carol on the floor, and I'm just like, Morgan, you son of a bitch. And I said, well, eventually that did not turn out very well, because Owen got up and knocked Morgan out with his kendo stick. And then it scared Denise, and he grabbed the knife, and she said, knife, and held it to Denise, and he started to hold Denise hostage. Meanwhile, Eugene, Rosita, and Tara were all in the garage. They were discussing stuff, and then Eugene was reading this science book or something like that, and he found a way to unlock the door. So eventually they wanted to know what the hell's going on. Eventually, Rosita, thinking Abraham is dead, and Tara told her, no, he's not. We didn't see it. We don't know yet. You don't even know yet. Eventually, Well, eventually they all three of them got up and they saw Carol and Morgan on the floor, and then they looked at Rosie Owen, who's holding Denise at knife point, and Tara says, "You don't have to don't take her, please spare her." But eventually he said, "Throw your guns over now." And so they they put the guns down. Eugene put the machete down, and eventually, and they slide him over. So Owen dropped the knife, and then he held Denise at gunpoint, put a gun to Denise at gunpoint, and then eventually they say don't. She told him don't move. So eventually, Owen dragged Denise out, and eventually he unlocks the door, and then he got out again and he locked the door. So eventually Owen at this time is the last wolf living was taking Denise hostage. Then all of a sudden now you go to Glenn and Maggie, and Maggie, in the beginning, she was climbing up the ladder trying to escape from the walkers. Eventually the ladder fell, and she was like hanging on for dear life, and then she finally made it on top of the ramp, and then she was like passed out. And then Glenn, who and Enid, who were trying to get into Alexandria, they were thinking of a plan. So what they did, Glenn was giving Enid a pep talk saying, "You can't be afraid anymore. You can't be afraid anymore." And so, if you're afraid, if you run, you die. And then Denise, and then Enid went, "Okay." Eventually, Glenn and Enid climbed up a tree, and eventually Glenn sees Maggie right on top of the rail on the board where the fence is, where the wall is. So eventually, it was just tense. It was. Now we go to the ending. They were like covered up in walker guts, and Michonne was talking to Denise one last time. Deanna gave Rick letters to Spencer and Maggie to give to them when she goes, and eventually Michonne says, "We have to go," and then Deanna took a gun, pointed at her. It says, "I'm not ready until I'm ready to go." And she says, "God bless you." And it says, "Good luck, start to finish." Okay, then all of a sudden, they were like Sam. Jesse's trying to calm them down, saying, "Make it all pretend, make it all pretend." Like, well, Jesse was playing tiptoe. Well, Sam was playing tiptoe through the tulips over and over again. While ants were were around a half-eaten cookie. I'm just like, it's like Sam, like he was drawing a picture of him tied up to a tree where the monster's going, like Sam, Sam, it's not the way it used to be anymore. So eventually Sam agreed to go with them in the walker guts, but eventually then they all started going down the stairs past the walkers, like with the smell of them. So, and they say, "Don't draw attention." They were quiet and all that, and Carl had little baby Judith underneath his sheet. So eventually when they were going out, Deanna was about to commit suicide, shoot herself, and eventually she heard walkers coming up, and so she decided to get up from the bed and started shooting all the walkers a few times. And in the end, like she looked fierce, and she was like, she was going out in a blaze of glory, and she was like, "Ah!" And like she looked like she was screaming. And they say, "End this shit," like so. And eventually the ending, they were all escaping Jesse's house, and they were like holding hands. And then Father Gabriel joined. He says, "I'm not going to run away. I'm in this." So eventually they all held hands, trying to escape the herd. And then Sam, being the annoying little brat that he is, kept saying, "Mom, Mom, Mom." And that was it. And then I yelled at the screen, shut the fuck up! You want to die? Oh, okay, and so far that was it, but they had an extra scene where Sasha, Abraham, and Daryl were coming back in a truck since Daryl's bike got stolen and the car is totaled. So eventually they stole this fuel truck, and eventually they were ambushed on the road, a roadblock by a bunch of guys when we now know as the Saviors. And then they say, hand over your weapons and whatever, we want your weapons and whatever's in that truck. And they say, why? And he goes, because your property now belongs to Negan. And that was it. That was the mid-season finale. And so far, it was okay, but it was good, but not great. So eventually, that's my update for start to finish. And next time when I'm on, I'm going to talk about No Way Out, which was the mid-season premiere that came on Valentine's Day. And eventually, we like to say goodbye to a wonderful actress who played Denise. She did a great job. She played who played Deanna on the show, Tova Feldshuh. She is a wonderful actress, and I wish her all the best in her future endeavors, and she'll always be a part of the Walking Dead family. Rest in peace, Deanna. You will be missed. Anyways, that's it for me. So if you want to leave a comment down there, be my guest. The rules are no bashing, no name calling, and no negativity. So this is Jen signing off, and I will talk to you again soon when we talk about No Way Out. Have a good night.